Hello book besties! I'm so happy to be back. I feel like it's been a while, for me anyway, since I've sat down and filmed like a chatty little book video. Today I thought we'd do the mid-year book tag. I've seen this book tag going around on YouTube and I just absolutely love watching these videos, and I've basically compiled different questions from different videos. And I know that this is going up a little bit later. That's because I've been on holiday and I just haven't had a chance to film it, but I thought I'd still do it because we are still in July, which is halfway through the year. But this is 1 or 2 weeks later than the actual technical midpoint of the year. But I still wanted to do it. I still wanted to do a little mid-year book tag. So like I said, I've compiled different questions from different videos and I've got 14 questions altogether. So let's get straight into it. First question is the best book that I've read in 2024 so far. And I'm actually going to say a whole series for this one. I think the best book that I've read is probably Powerless, but I am going to throw in the whole series with that because this whole series I feel like has had the most impact this year on my reading experience. And every single one of these books I've absolutely loved. And this was definitely the standout best series that I've read, I think. And every single one of these characters in these books literally stay with me and I think about them when I'm not reading the books, and I feel like that says a lot. And this is one of my favourite series ever, and I'm so glad that I picked up Powerless in January and that I got to experience this whole series when these two were released this year. I just absolutely loved every single one of these, and I would say that they're my favourite reads so far this year. Next up we have the best sequel that I've read so far this year. There was one that really stood out to me. And that's a book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is another series that I've started this year and I've been absolutely loving it, and I only have one book left in that series to go, but the one that really stood out to me is All In. I loved this. This is the third one in the series. There's 4 altogether, and for me they literally get better with every single book. Like the second one was better than the first, the third one was better than the second. Like they literally just keep getting better and better, and I'm so excited to read the final one. But this one I absolutely loved it. I loved the whole setting. This one was set in Las Vegas, so it took these characters that we've been following in book 1 and 2, but we moved to Las Vegas where we were in big fancy casinos and hotels, and the actual case that they were working on was so interesting. So interesting, and I loved every single second of it. I loved how it was more of a complex case, and I also really liked that we get to see more of the sort of side characters and we get to learn more about them as each book goes on. I absolutely love that. And basically every single one of these books focuses on a different case, but then there is one big sort of plot going on throughout the series, and this one we had some real development of the big case, and it just made me so excited to read the final one. And even though I'm so excited, I'm also putting it off because I don't want this series to end because I've absolutely loved it. But this is definitely the best sequel that I've read so far this year. I absolutely loved it, and I literally still think about this case, honestly. Next up we have a new release that you haven't read yet but you really want to, and I actually have 2 that really stood out to me in this one. The first one being A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I read 7 Year Slip this year, absolutely loved it, and I've just been so excited to read more of her books. And this one, the main character I believe gets stuck in her favourite book series, which I just think is such an interesting concept. I love the magical realism vibe that her books have as well, and this is her newest release and I'm so excited to read this. So excited. I have a feeling I'm going to love it. So this is definitely on my priority TBR at the minute. And then the other new release is The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. I've never read anything by this author before. The whole concept of this, again, kind of similar with the magical realism kind of vibe. This basically follows Delphi, who's just ended up in the afterlife, and she basically meets her soulmate there. But then there's some mix up and her soulmate gets sent back to Earth, and she basically makes a deal where she can go back to Earth and find him, but he doesn't remember ever meeting her, and I think she has something like 10 days to basically make him fall in love with her. I just thought that concept was so interesting, so unique, and I've been so excited to read this. And I love a sort of romance but with a bit more to it, or a kind of a twist to it, and I feel like this is definitely what this book is giving. So they're the 2 new releases that I haven't read yet but that I'm so excited to read and are definitely on my priority TBR. And then we have most anticipated new release for the second half of the year, and I definitely have to say this is Daydream for me by Hannah Grace. I think this book was actually meant to come out either this month or last month, but then the release date got pushed on to August, and I have been so anticipating this read. I really liked Icebreaker, I really liked Wildfire, and I just honestly cannot wait for Daydream. This is the 3rd one in the Maple Hill series, and I believe that it's set back on campus, and it follows Henry, who we see in both the first books as well. And because of how much I enjoyed the first 2, I just feel like I'm gonna love this. And then we have the book that was the biggest surprise, and for this one I'm gonna say 7 Summers by Paige Toon. I actually read this really recently, and the thing that really surprised me about this is just how hooked I was and how fast paced it was, and how it is a summer romance but there is depth to it. I did have a feeling that I would like it, but I absolutely loved it. I loved it, and I just think it makes the perfect summer romance read, and I just had such a good time reading it. And I love the two main characters in this. I love how we follow them across 7 different summers, and I love seeing how things can change, people can change, life changes, and how these two people were kind of brought back together every summer, and how they're basically meant to be together. They're basically soulmates. And for a 430 something page book, I read this literally within 2 days. Favourite author that's new to you or a debut author? So I have a few for these. First one is Page 2, like I've just mentioned. This is a new author to me, and this book literally makes me want to read more of her books. That's how much I loved it. And I think I definitely will pick up more of her books in the future. And then we have Charlotte Rickson. This is The One That Got Away. I loved this. I loved it. It was a romance, but it had so much more depth to it. There was other things going on. There was a bit of a mystery in this as well. I absolutely loved it. This basically follows Benjamin and Clara. It follows them in the past, meeting at uni. We see how they get to know each other, but then it also follows the present, and in the present something really tragic is going on, and they're basically not talking anymore. So we kind of find out why they're not talking slowly throughout the book, and we basically follow their relationship and their connection through the years. But then something also major is happening in the present timeline, where she basically wants to go and find him. I really like the way that this is written. I really like how the story of them is told, and like I said, this was so much more than just a romance, because there were so many other things going on at the same time. And then for debut author, I literally cannot believe that this is a debut book. I read this, absolutely loved it, and then when I found that out, I was like, she's automatically become an auto-author for me just from this one book, which is I Wish You Would by Ava DeLaurier. And I absolutely love this. It basically follows two best friends who are about to go into their senior year, and they have this thing called a senior sunrise, and that's basically an overnight stay at a beach, and they basically do activities with the whole year. And one of these activities is writing a letter to basically set their goals for the year and write down the things that they're basically too scared to do or too scared to say. And these letters are basically meant to go in a jar, and some of them get out and people start reading them, people's secrets and confessions are exposed, and it basically follows Natalia and Ethan, who are trying to work together to basically get these letters back. This was so fast paced, so easy to read, and just so gripping literally from page 1, and I felt very connected to both these two characters, which I feel like is hard to do as well, because this is literally a 270 something page book. Like, it's quite a small book, so to do that in that amount of time is just amazing, and I loved every single second of it. And then we have newest fictional crush. I actually have 2 for these that really stood out. The first one is Mac from Powerful, which is Adina's love interest. I loved him. I loved him. I literally can't stop thinking about him, and I hope that he appears in the 3rd book. That would just be everything. It would literally be everything to me. And I would honestly struggle to pick between Mac and Kai as my favourite fictional crush. They're both incredible. They're both incredible, and I love them. And then the other one is Finn Finnegan from 7 Summers. I loved him. I literally loved him, and he very quickly became my newest fictional crush. Just from reading this little standalone book that made you cry. I actually think there's only one book that's made me cry this year. Is that right? I genuinely think that is the case. And the one that did it was Powerful. There is just something about this, and reading it from Adina's perspective, that just hit. It just hit. And there is one bit in particular that just gets me every single time, and even thinking about it, I'm like, I can't think about it. I obviously can't say too much without spoiling anything, but reading it from her perspective just hit different. And I've also seen recently that people are tandem reading Powerless and Powerful together, and I just think that experience would be top tier, because obviously I know what happens in this because I read Powerless first, but if you didn't know and you read them together and you got her perspective at the same time as what was happening in Powerless, I don't even know if I could have coped with that. I don't think I'd be able to recover from that. I'm trying to think, is there any other book that made me cry this year? And I genuinely can't think of one. So I think this is the only one. There we have it. Next question is book that made you happy. I have 2 for this. The first one being The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This had me kicking my feet. This had me giggling. I just really liked the romance in this. I really liked the magical realism element to it as well. And this is one that I literally wish I'd annotated, because there are just some such good lines in here. And just this whole story, and when I think about these characters or this book, it makes me really happy. Makes me really happy. So definitely this one. And then the other one I actually read recently on holiday, and when I tell you I could not stop smiling, and that's The Wind in the Willows. I loved this. This is literally Sylvanian families come to life, and when I say that, I mean it. I cannot explain the happiness that this book brought me. I love how each chapter is like a mini little adventure, but then there is kind of a bigger story going on at the same time. I love the illustrations. The illustrations are everything. They're literally everything. Let me just show you one, just so you can get the vibe. Like, Look, I'm obsessed. I love the characters, they're so funny. It's just such a happy book. It's such a happy book and it's just such a fun time reading it. And I read this on holiday as well when we were staying in the countryside and we had this big garden and there were bunnies running around in the garden and it just felt like the perfect setting to read this book, and I'm so glad that I took it with me. I really enjoyed and it just made me very, very happy. Best cover of the year. This one I have two that really stand out. The first one being A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. I think every single book in the series, this is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, every single book in the series, the covers are gorgeous. I think if I absolutely had to pick, this one would be my favourite one. I just love the pink and the blue going on and it's honestly just stunning. It's stunning. I also love the inside with the quote. Stunning. And then my other favourite cover is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I just love this. I don't know what it is about it. I just absolutely love it. I think it's stunning. I also love how the little flowers continue on the back as well. And I don't know what it is about it. It just draws me to it. It draws me in. I love the colours. I love the vibe. I think she's stunning. And then we have number of 5-star reads this year. So I worked out that I had 8 5-star reads this year. But when I look back on them, I feel like as time goes on, I definitely look back at some of those 5 stars and think that's probably not a 5-star just because it didn't stick with me over time. It might have been a 5-star at the time that I read it. As more time's gone on, I feel like that list has actually got smaller. So I actually went back through them and picked out the ones that are definitely 100% 5-star reads. So I'm going to go through those ones and we have 5 of those all together. The first 2, which you probably guessed, are Powerless and Powerful. These were actually 6-star reads for me. These are my only 6-star reads of the entire year. I loved both these. I still think about them. These characters literally haven't left me. And I would literally give these infinite stars if I could. And then we have War D by Freedom McFadden. I feel like it's harder for a thriller to kind of get a 5-star rating that kind of sticks with you. I don't know if that's the same for anybody else, but I feel like it is harder because I feel like in a thriller you don't get as connected to the characters as you do say maybe in a romance or a fantasy. But this one, the whole plot of this has definitely stuck with me. I've really, really enjoyed it. I still think about it and it's definitely my favourite Freedom McFadden book that I've read so far. And then we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I love this. As I said before, such a cute book. Literally makes me giddy even thinking about it and makes me so excited to read more Ashley Poston books. And then last but not least we have The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is the second one in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I literally had the biggest book hangover after I finished this. It was amazing. It was amazing. It's definitely a 5-star read and I literally still haven't recovered from it. It was just insane. It was insane and chaotic in the best way possible. And then we have a book you enjoyed with mixed reviews. This was actually really hard for me to narrow down because I kind of feel like all books have mixed reviews to an extent. The ones that I've seen most recently are Reckless and The Housemaid is Watching. So Reckless I really, really enjoyed. I can see what people mean when they say that the fantasy kind of plot was sort of more in the background and it was a lot more romance focus. I personally really, really liked that because I do think we are going to get that fantasy plot in the third one, and I really liked that we got to see more of Peyton and Kai together, and I'd literally read anything with them in, honestly, just because their banter and just their dynamic together I absolutely love. So I'd say that one definitely does have mixed reviews because I know that some people were disappointed with it. And then the other one that I have seen people were disappointed with is The Housemaid is Watching, which is the third one in the Housemaid series. I personally really love this. I love how different each one of these books are in the series because it would be so easy from the first book to just kind of carry on that plot, and I think that would have kind of been a bit boring. I love how different each one of these books are. This one is set over a decade on from the second one and we get to see Millie in sort of a different situation because she's a mum now, she's a wife, she's got this new fancy house, she's financially in a better place than she has been in the first 2 books, and it's just really nice to kind of see her in a different situation, in a different light. And the things that I've been seeing about this are that it's kind of slow paced to start with, and I do think there was kind of setting up that needed to be done, but the thing that I really enjoyed was there was kind of that eerie feeling and something weird is going on or something is just not quite right, and I loved that sense at the start, and I don't think we could have got that if it was fully action packed to begin with. And I liked how it was kind of all set up, and I just thought the way it was written was really fast paced, and even though we were kind of following her going about her daily life, it did feel very much like we were moving forward and there was sort of a direction we were going in, even if we didn't know it at the time. I will say that I did think it was a bit predictable because I did guess pretty much every twist, I think, but it didn't make me enjoy it any less. I still really, really enjoyed it, and I do think it was a nice way to wrap up the whole series. And then we have What Books Am I Most Excited to read by the end of the year. I feel like I have quite a few for this one, and there will be some overlap with the next question, which is predicted 5 stars. Just because I feel like the books that I'm most excited to read, a lot of them, the reason I'm most excited for them is because I think that they're going to be 5-star reads. So there is going to be a bit of an overlap, but the books that I'm most excited to read by the end of the year, we have quite a few. The first one is Daydream by Hannah Grace, which I mentioned earlier is the third one in the Maple Hill series. That's a book that I would definitely be getting on the release day and hopefully be reading on the release day as well, because I'm just so excited for that one. And then we have Fourth Wing, which I know I haven't read yet. I still need to. I'm kind of nervous going into this, but I am still really excited to read it, and it's definitely one of my most anticipated reads on my entire TBR. And the day will come when I finally pick up this book, because I definitely want to read it by the end of the year, if not within the next month or so. Not making any promises. And then we also have Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is the 4th one in the Natural series. The 4th and final one, which I'm so sad about, but this is definitely one of the ones that I'm most excited to read. I can't wait to find out what happens. I can't wait to see how this whole series is wrapped up. But again, like I said earlier, I'm gonna be so sad when it's done. So I'm kind of putting off reading it just for a bit because I literally don't want it to end. And then we have A Novel Love Story by Ashley Possum, which I mentioned earlier, and Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I actually need to read the first 2 in this series. I know you can read them as standalones, but I heard that the reading experience is basically better if you read Part of Your World and Yours Truly first. So I definitely want to do that, but I'm so excited to read an Abby Jimenez book because I'm yet to do that, and I don't know what it is. I just feel like she's going to be an author that I really connect with her writing. I don't know what it is about her books that makes me think that, but it does. And I feel like she's going to be one of my new favourite authors, fingers crossed. So I'm really excited to read this one, but also the first 2 in the series as well that I still need to pick up at some point. And then we have The Inmate by Frida McFadden, which is probably my most anticipated Frida McFadden read. I really love anything to do with criminal psychology or prisons or anything with that kind of setting, so I just feel like I'm gonna love this, and I'm literally saving it for when I'm 100% in the mood to read it because I just want to make the most of it. And then finally we have After the Fire by Charlotte Brixton. Like I said earlier, I read The One That Got Away by Charlotte Brixton, absolutely loved it, so I'm so excited to read this. This is actually her new release that was so kindly sent to me, which I can't even believe that I'm saying that, and I believe that this is coming out in August, and it's honestly one of my most anticipated reads, so I'm so looking forward to reading this one. And then out of that list, the ones that I predict that are going to be 5-star reads are The Inmate, A Novel Love Story, and Fourth Wing. That's what I'm predicting, just based on what I've heard about them and based on the vibe that they're giving. They're my predicted 5-star reads for the rest of the year. And that actually brings us to the end of this video. I will leave all of the questions down below in case you want to answer any of them. I'd absolutely love to know your answers to them. And I'm honestly so excited to see what the rest of the year brings reading wise. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so happy you're here, and I will hopefully see you on my next video.